Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about the ultimate Zelda remake for Nintendo Switch 2. This is the next installment in the Ultimate series for Nintendo Switch 2 have been doing. The first was about the Ultimate Star Fox, the second was about the Ultimate Mario Kart, and now we are going to be talking about the Ultimate Zelda Remake. And some of you might be curious, why are you talking about a Zelda remake as opposed to a full-on new Zelda? Well, that's because I think the Zelda Remake is coming a lot sooner, and there's a lot of implications behind this. When are we going to see this? Is it going to fit into Zelda's 40th anniversary? What Zelda game would Nintendo choose to remake? Why does it make sense for there to be a remake as opposed to a whole-on new game first? And what sort of changes might we see in this remake, assuming it is a big game for Nintendo Switch 2? That's what I would like to discuss today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and if you're unsure, watch through this video and then decide. So first, let's talk about why a Zelda remake makes sense to happen pretty early on into the Switch 2 era. The Legend of Zelda series always has a big presence early on for Nintendo consoles. If it's not a new game, then it's some sort of Zelda repurposing. In the past, it's been Zelda remasters, like Wind Waker HD for example, or Ocarina of Time 3D. In other times, it's been a new Zelda game, like Twilight Princess for the Nintendo Wii, or Breath of the Wild for the Nintendo Switch. But given that we just got The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, a new 2D Zelda, last year, and the year prior, Tears of the Kingdom, a new 3D Zelda that took them pretty much the entire generation to make, I think it's pretty unrealistic to expect another brand new Zelda game early on for the Switch 2 generation. So then, is Nintendo just going to accept that there won't be some sort of major Zelda offering early on the Switch 2 generation? No, I think Zelda's really important, and getting these Zelda fans involved early on is going to be a big part to the Switch 2's success. So how can they get out a big, exciting offering of Zelda that will inspire many Zelda fans and perhaps others to jump onto the Switch 2 bandwagon relatively early? By remaking a Zelda game. And when I say remake, I mean remake, not remaster. There is a lot of confusion between these terms. Nintendo has remastered many Zelda games: Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword. There's even some rumors out there suggesting that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom might have some remastering work done too. And I think there's probably some truth in that. I'm actually willing to predict that there will be some select Switch 1 games that will see some sort of 4K enhancement, but personally I do not think they'll be treated as individual releases. And even if they were, this wouldn't be the kind of Zelda offering that would satisfy the Zelda fanbase and get them involved into the Switch 2 generation early on. This would be mostly appealing to others who haven't picked up Breath of the Wild yet, and maybe something like this we can see in the first year of Switch 2 in this year of 2025. But I expect an actual remake in time for the 40th anniversary for The Legend of Zelda in 2026. And I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of 2026, we also start to hear about the live-action Zelda movie. Similar to how Nintendo has treated Mario with the Nintendo Park, the Mario merchandising, the Lego sets, the movie, the games, and how they had that all sort of come together and cross-promote each other, I think Nintendo has a similar plan with Zelda. We've already seen the Zelda Lego set that included the Deku Tree from both Breath of the Wild and Ocarina of Time. We know the movie's coming along, and so I think Nintendo's going to be well positioned in that second year of Nintendo Switch 2 to celebrate that 40th anniversary with a big Zelda release. But it would still be too soon for a new 3D Zelda game. It would have to be something else, and so I think it's going to be a remake. Now, Nintendo has remade Zelda games before. They remade The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, but that was a 2D Zelda game. I think we're looking at something bigger here. It would be a remake for a 3D Zelda game. And so of the 3D Zelda games, which one makes the most sense to be remade? I don't think it's Skyward Sword. We already have it available on Nintendo Switch. Switch 2 will be backwards compatible, so not that one. Wind Waker seems like a timeless art style, and there are rumors of Wind Waker HD coming over to Nintendo Switch eventually. And yes, we are talking about the beginning of the Switch 2 generation, but I still think, given that the Switch 2 is backwards compatible, there's still a few years where this could happen, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do see something like that, and I don't think this would be the kind of game that would inspire the Zelda fanbase to really jump on the Switch 2 bandwagon. Some people might theorize that Wind Waker or a Twilight Princess HD will be exclusive to Switch 2, but at the end of the day, these would still just be remasters of GameCube games. The point behind this is to have something ambitious that showcases the abilities of the hardware and bring in that large Zelda fanbase, while also, timing-wise, taking advantage of other things going on like the Zelda Movie. And no, that's not me saying that the Zelda Movie is going to be based off whatever Zelda game they're remaking. I think similar to the Mario Movie, there are going to be a lot of Zelda elements that remind us of different games in the series, but it's going to be its own thing. But anyway, Skyward Sword doesn't make sense, Wind Waker doesn't make sense in my opinion. Twilight Princess though, I think there's definitely an argument to be made there. We've talked about Twilight Princess being remade before. I do think eventually they will remake Twilight Princess. I remember that tech demo for Wii U. It looked amazing, and that was just a tech demo for Wii U. If they eventually remake Twilight Princess, be it for the Switch 2 or Switch 3, depending on when this happens, that would be a very special experience. It would be far superior to what we saw in that tech demo, and I look forward to that day. But I don't think they're going to go with Twilight Princess. I think they're going to go with Ocarina of Time. And just for the record, I don't think they're going to remake Majora's Mask first, because that is a sequel to Ocarina of Time. You do Ocarina of Time first, and if it does well, that opens the door to Majora's Mask. Now, whenever these discussions happen, there's always some people who are a bit confused because Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and other Zelda games have already been remastered. A remastering is an enhancement of the original work. A remake is building something new from the ground up based off that original work, and in some cases with some elements reimagined. I feel like a really good comparison for what I'm sort of expecting here is Resident Evil 4 Remake. They took the original game and rebuilt it from the ground up visually. There are even a variety of artistic changes. But beyond that, there's also a variety of gameplay changes. There are new elements and segments to the game. It's not the same experience, however, it is meant to recapture some of that initial experience, but be something else at the same time. And so yes, Nintendo has remastered Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 3DS, but that was also back in 2011. The original game came out in 1998. There was a 13-year gap here. For 2026, we're going to be talking about a 15-year gap since the 3DS remaster. It's been more than enough time to maybe consider revisiting this game again. And I think specifically Ocarina of Time has been hinted at by Eiji Aonuma, the Zelda series producer, who has a history of teasing future Zelda projects. He's teased Majora's Mask 3D, he's teased Link's Awakening, even most recently he's teased The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. But there are two different interviews that Aonuma took part in that seem to be suggesting some sort of hint towards Ocarina of Time. There's a more obvious one where at the end of the Game Informer interview he was asked about an Ocarina of Time remake, and he simply laughed and said no comment as opposed to denying the possibility, as he has done for other things more recently like a Dungeon Maker for example. And then there's the Nintendo Dream magazine where he made sure to mention and focus on Rauru specifically from Ocarina of Time. So of all the Zelda games to be remade that would make sense to come out early on for the Switch 2 generation to show off the hardware, take advantage of some Zelda cross-promotion, and inspire the Zelda fanbase to jump onto the bandwagon early on, I think Ocarina of Time would be it. Especially because Ocarina of Time was the first 3D Zelda game. It's iconic. It's something that would be really great to revisit, especially with the Zelda movie on the way. Establishing and reminding those of what the core of Zelda is. But what kind of experience would we be looking at here if they were to be remaking Ocarina of Time? Well, visually, I would expect this game to be extremely impressive. Superior to that tech demo we saw for Twilight Princess to showcase the Wii U. There will be no artifacts here from the original project because this would be a ground-up new effort. And reminder, the idea behind this is to showcase the abilities of the hardware. So yes, this would in some ways be a graphical showcase, but it would go beyond that. We may see a very high resolution, we may even see some cool ray tracing effects, so the lighting in this game may be impressive, and this would all be thanks to DLSS and NVIDIA's technology that will definitely help the Switch 2 to punch above its weight and do these cool things. But I also expect the loading to be instantaneous. There will be no loading screens. Exploring the world will be seamless. Now, do I think they will change the game so much that it will become an open world game? I personally doubt that. Again, this is meant to be an effort that they can get out relatively early on for the Switch 2, while we wait for the next big 3D Zelda game. So this isn't going to have the same scope as a whole-on new 3D Zelda game. I'm not expecting this to be a 100 to 200 hour experience. I expect it to be pretty much comparable to the original experience, maybe a little bit longer because of some new elements, but ultimately similar. But that doesn't mean there can't be some things done to modernize it. Just being able to go through and walk and explore the world seamlessly will make a difference. But also, like most other modern Zelda games, you will have access to the camera, being able to move it around freely. At the same time, I expect there will be other changes. Looking at what they did with Ocarina of Time 3D and how they added gyro aiming, I would assume that something like this would return. You would be able to aim around with motion controls if you so choose. But there's also been a lot of talk of how the Switch 2 Joy-Cons will offer a mouse-like feature. And so this may be another way to look and aim around. I would also expect the game to take advantage of HD Rumble. But something else I'm expecting that perhaps many others haven't considered is that there may be some sort of communication feature involved. Looking at Wind Waker HD, they added the Tingle Bottles. And the concept behind this was that you could be exploring an island shore and you could see a bottle and it would be a message from another player. This is somewhat of a similar concept to the Soulsborne games, where you can see messages from other players throughout the world. And I actually think they could incorporate this into Ocarina of Time, except instead of it being a Tingle Bottle, maybe it could be a message that could be dropped by a bird flying around, and you can send your own messages out there. And this is the way it could be done, how it would still fit into the world. And this would also be an optional feature that you don't have to take advantage of, but I think something like this might make a lot of sense because I am expecting some extra communication features, and perhaps even some sort of a level of return to Miiverse on Switch 2. That's a theory of mine, we'll see what actually happens. Going beyond taking advantage of some of the features of the Switch 2 and just talking about changes to the game, I think they will add at least one more new dungeon. I always thought that getting the Light Medallion essentially for free wasn't the best way to handle it. I think there should be a Light Temple. And I also expect each dungeon to be reimagined, not the same experience, but new versions of each of these dungeons that carry the spirit and atmosphere to some extent from the initial release, but giving us new puzzles and challenges. And on that note, I also expect the combat to be completely overhauled as well. I expect at least some subtle gameplay changes that remind us of modern Zelda. More freedom in terms of how we can use our items. More movement options for Link, perhaps they still retain the jump button, for example. And then I also expect there will be a finely tuned balance to the difficulty. Maybe there will be difficulty options as there are for a lot of the remasters. A normal mode and a hero mode. And one last thing I'll speak on here are story elements. I'm not expecting vast changes, but I am hoping to see some small details added in that us Zelda fans can really sink our teeth into. Perhaps putting in some detail that speaks to the idea that at the end of Ocarina of Time, it does cause the three-way split. Perhaps throwing in some lore that shows the history of the Zonai. Little elements like this that would help Ocarina of Time fit into the overall newer lore of Zelda would be nice. If something along these lines is accomplished for Nintendo's next entry for Zelda, a remake early on for Switch 2, I think it could be the ultimate Zelda remake for Nintendo Switch 2. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.